but a prompt asking for your permission to record. So once you get that, please go ahead and approve the recording. If you don't approve it, I think the Google Meet will actually remove you from the room. We will have closed captioning on through the meeting. Looks like you guys are already muted. But we're going to give it just a few more minutes in case anybody else wants to jump in with us, okay? And then we'll get started. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you for having yourselves on mute. If you have questions, please feel free to use the chat feature along the right-hand side, and you can submit your questions there, and I'll be happy to take those. So today we're going to cover study skills, and my name is Tessa Weisenborn. I'm a success coach in the Advising Center, and I'll be covering study skills with you today. So one of the first and most important things you can do when studying and getting yourself ready for an exam and things like that is to prepare a space or find a space that's going to give you the best chance to focus on your studies. So to do that, consider everything from your chair. Is it comfortable? If you're studying in your bedroom and you sit on your bed, are you going to lay down and fall asleep? Your lighting, noise in the background, sometimes even the colors in the space can have an impact. And there are some links here that I'll talk a little bit about color psychology. So if you have greens and blues, it can be calming. If you have red, it can inspire creativity. So just kind of considering what you're surrounding yourself with. Minimizing distractions is also going to be a key part when you're studying. Put your cell phone on Do Not Disturb. You can set a timer that says, okay, I'm not going to check my phone until it buzzes, and set that for as long as you want it. If you want that to be 10 minutes of focus time, 20 minutes, then put your phone face down away from you so that you're not tempted to pick it up if it lights up. Minimize and eliminate clutter. Sometimes clarity of focus and clarity of your mind is a reaction to your physical space. So if you have all kinds of loose papers and things everywhere, try to get those tidied up out of sight so that you can put your mind to the task at hand. And cluttering your mind too even includes, so music. If you're like me, I love to have music on when I study, but I have to make sure that doesn't draw my focus. So I have to make sure I pick things that don't have a lot of lyrics that I'm not going to want to sing along with. Spotify and YouTube do have lists for studying specifically. So I'm going to share with you here. This is Spotify. And if you go into your search bar, you can just type study. And they have, as you can see, a whole genre associated with it. I recommend it because, like I said, that's one less thing that you'll have to worry about is putting that playlist together. But you can as well. All right, guys, put your playlist together for that. Go back here. Okay. So the next thing to emphasize would be getting organized. So using a planner or an online calendar like Google that comes as part of having a Nash student email address, you can use an online calendar to record and track all your deadlines. So the first thing I recommend to students, especially right now, while so many of us are virtual online and we're not in campus and seated every day or every other day, is taking your syllabus first thing and putting down all of your dates and deadlines into your calendar. If you use the online calendar, the benefit is that you can set notifications and alarms on your assignments as well, so that if you know you have a big essay that's due for a class, you can set notifications a week or 2 to 3 weeks out to remind yourself, oh, hey, yeah, I've got that big essay. I should be doing my research now, or I should be going to the Nash Writing Lab and letting them look at my rough draft. So if you're comfortable with technology and using that as an option, I do recommend that as well. And I'll drop this presentation, I'll drop the link in the chat here when we're all done. Each of these hyperlinks has some YouTube tutorials, or you can go to YouTube as well. And if there's anything you want to learn how to do in the Google Suite, there's a video available, right? A lot of us, I'm sure, use YouTube to teach us how to do anything nowadays. So once you have all your deadlines recorded, you need to start planning out, because it's good to block out time to study, and you should, but it's also good to strategize. So kind of taking these upcoming deadlines and doing the quadrant system where you decide what's important, what is urgent, what's not urgent and not important, and then kind of directing your studies from there. So I need to get, this is due next week, I need to get that done first, right? And kind of getting yourself into a mindset so that way you can tackle what you need to study based on the priority. Again, being organized and not having clutter to distract you, using binders, notebooks, keeping things separated by subject. And so that way you have a neat system and you know where to go when you need to look up, oh, what was the answer to that math problem? Or how did we do that in class? Knowing which notebook or which, even if you have one binder, but you tab it out and divide it, which section of that is that in? You should also organize your Google Drive accordingly as well. You can create folders within Google Drive. Google Drive even has a way to let you color code them. So if you want, you can match colors and coordinate your studies that way. And then you can even make one folder and drop other folders into it. So once the fall semester ends, you can create a fall 2020 semester and drag and drop your folders from your classes into that. So that way, when you go into your drive this semester, it's not cluttered and unorganized. Another thing that's really helpful is to make sure to avoid the temptation that if you're using Google Docs, Google Slides, make sure that you name each document or each presentation with something that you'll recognize. The temptation is always to just put your name or what course it is, but in which you can include those things, but then also maybe put discussion board week 1 or journal entry number 7, chapter 3 homework. Make sure you put that up in the title of the document as well, or follow the instructor's directions for naming documents so that way you can find them easily too. Okay, so you have a clean space, you have a plan of attack, you've got everything laid out and organized. I want to study this, I want to study at this time. What strategies can you use? So the first thing I would recommend is choosing ways to study that suit your learning style. And if you don't know what a learning style is, there's plenty of online quizzes you can take for free, but generally you'll know if you like to listen to things, if you like to talk to people, if you have to build a thing, you'll know what suits you best. And so in this link, it'll recommend, so if you know you're visual, you like to do artistic things, you need to see it laid out. You can create outlines, you can make color-coded flashcards. This is really helpful as a pre-writing strategy and as a review to make diagrams, flowcharts, concept maps, ways to help you visualize the topic or the connections in the content of your course. You're an auditory learner, you like to listen to things, you need somebody to explain it to you, to hear it. You can record lectures and replay them later. If you can't make sure you get your instructor's permission, but if you don't have their permission to record, then take your notes from class and record yourself summarizing them, listen to it back. Make flashcards and review aloud, find a partner or group so you can recite, things like that. And then again, for those tactile and kinesthetic, so these are the people who like to move, who need to be doing something. If you're memorizing things, pace around the room. Copy important notes more than once. I know that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but if you have to do that physical act to help you store that information, if nothing else, see can you condense it each time you write it so that you feel more confident. Okay, I don't have to write out the whole thing. I don't have to copy it from the book because I know it here. So could I just make this into a bulleted list and check your learning that way? Taking short intervals, studying in short intervals and taking breaks is also important for the kinesthetic learner. Because if you like to move, you need to have that chance to move, right? Let me go back into my PowerPoint here. Sorry, guys. Let me switch back here. Okay, so again, knowing yourself, knowing how you like to learn information, and then making your plan to study according to what's going to suit your strength. And then and so here down in the right corner, we have an example of one of these mind maps. Again, you've probably maybe used these in English classes as like a pre-writing strategy when you're just kind of gathering your thoughts and thinking about, well, what are the things I want to talk about? What topics do I want to cover? What are the subtopics I can cover? But that's also a good way to review concepts as well. And we'll talk a little bit, but we can revisit that in just a minute as well. But let's say you're going through that process and you're studying your flashcards, you get to a point in your notes and you don't remember what the instructor said. One of the best studying strategies I would promote is visiting office hours. A lot of instructors are doing them virtually. You can drop into a Google Meet like this, or some are even doing them on campus. But if there's anything that you need clarity in, make sure that you're utilizing those office hours. They're required to have them. They want students to come. Otherwise, they're just in their office hours, probably grading papers or something, but they'd probably rather be teaching and helping students because that's why most teachers go into it, right? Again, with the virtual and online environment that we're in, logging into your courses and checking your email often are huge study skills, if only so that you can stay on top of deadlines. Some instructors will send out reminders. Some instructors will also send emails with supplemental materials. Oh, hey, we covered this in class today. Here's this cool video you can watch. Here's an article that might be helpful. So make sure you're checking your email often. And this is the spring semester. So if you do have a seated class, but we might have a snow day, or your instructor might have a snow day, you'll want to make sure you don't miss that email. Another tip that can be helpful if you have access to print at home, print off your assignment directions and then highlight portions, underline portions. Sometimes I myself like to bullet things, like just make a list, because then it becomes a to-do list, right? Okay, I have to cover this. I have to have an introduction. I have to, especially if it's an essay or a writing prompt, you can start making your outline a lot of times just based on the assignment directions. So again, for those kinesthetic learners, really manipulating, working with those directions. And if there's a part that you're not understanding, that's where you can then send that email or drop into those office hours and say, hey, I'm trying to get started on this, but I'm not sure I understand. Can you help me? Okay. Following up to supplement as well. Let's say you go into office hours, but you just kind of want to study on your own. You can use Quizlet to make flashcards. If you don't mind making them electronically, you can also use Quizlet to browse for flashcards that some students have already put together, decks that might relate to your course. And then Khan Academy is a free website that will have videos that might supplement course materials. So I've used Khan Academy for math classes to see, sometimes they'll demonstrate how to work out different problems, and that's helped clarify some things for me in the past. Okay. Another strategy, and so this is all kind of one big strategy, but as you're getting ready, especially let's say for a midterm exam or a test review or a final exam, use your syllabus, your textbook, your notes, any old quizzes or exams, and make a list of topics that you think might be likely to show up on the test again. Especially in the syllabus, right? Every week, they'll usually say, here's the chapter topic, or this is what we're going to cover this week. And then based on those topics, kind of make yourself a list, then you categorize them based on your comfort. So from 1 to 3, you can label a topic. I don't know this. I don't even remember learning this. 2 being like, I sort of know this. Yeah, that's vaguely familiar. I can recognize this term. And then 3 being like, I know this well. I can explain this to somebody else without having to look at anything. I've got this. And then based on your rating of those topics, when you sit down to study in the blocked out time you've provided yourself to study, then kind of strategize, okay, I want to focus on these things that I don't know at all. So I at least can get myself from a 3 to a 2, where yeah, I sort of know it. If I saw a test question on it, I might be able to work my way through the question and get to an answer. Or to move from a 2 to a 1, you can strategize which you'd rather do. But it's definitely important to kind of maybe start with those 1s and 2s and improve your mastery or knowledge of of the subject. And remember that studying, especially if you're a procrastinator or you're a person who likes to put things off, it's tempting to cram it all in right before the final test. But if you can block out regular times to study and regular times to review, if at the end of every class you review your notes, maybe try to, again, here I am with bullet points, but summarize what that class covered or what the big takeaways were for the class, and summarize those. And then each day when you go into class, or as you're sitting waiting for the Google Meet or the Zoom to start, kind of reviewing last week's or last session's main takeaways. And that way you're kind of building in for yourself little study breaks, because it's easier to retain information with smaller but consistent practices or sessions as opposed to all at once. Okay. And so this is similar, where you're going to use your syllabus as a guide, and using those chapter headlines or those weekly topics, try to see what can you remember. Start with the highest level of content. So if it's the big idea, what was the big idea? Try not to use your notes. Try not to use your book. Just go through the syllabus outline and see. And then if you're even just, let's say you're just going through the syllabus, you can rewrite it. But if let's say you're going through it and you're just thinking, okay, what do I remember about this? And you find yourself kind of spacing out or blanking, then maybe star that week or star that chapter, star that section headline, so that you know, okay, I need to revisit this. So after you've done that, you can use another color if you'd like to color code things, or you can have a separate sheet of paper where maybe you're taking notes on where you see I'm strong on this and checking it off, or making a note for yourself, I need to go back and look over that chapter. That's, again, going to help you put a plan together for what to study. Active learning strategies are a huge, huge help. These are some of the best ways that students can find to really retain information. So teaching information, in order to teach, you have to know a subject level or a subject matter very well, right? That's why your college instructors have master's degrees and doctorate degrees. You have to be well versed in it. So if, as you're reviewing your notes, see if you can get a family member or a friend or a study group, and practice teaching things to each other. Practice summarizing, okay, this is what this concept's about, because especially if there's auditory learners in your group, they get to hear it, you get to make sure you master it, and it's really helpful for both of you. Solving problems from memory, creating concept maps again, creating test questions. I think that one's really helpful, especially if you're in a study group. Sometimes study groups, the temptation can be to get off topic. But if you break down a chapter, or break down, if you're getting ready for a midterm, everybody takes a chapter and everybody has to come up with 3 or 4 questions, and then try to get other people to answer them. Then you guys can all review it together, right? So trying to think about, okay, so again, kind of revisiting that whole premise of looking at your lecture notes, looking at previous quizzes, looking at your chapter outlines, what are things that are likely going to show up here, and then seeing if you can write your own question and answers. Again, you can do that via Zoom and discuss the concepts. And if your instructor has built-in places for you to do practice exams, quizzes, a lot of instructors are using online platforms like Cengage and Pearson. Those will have practice exams and quizzes. Take advantage of them, because if they're not going to hurt your grade to do those practice quizzes, but they'll ultimately help you do better in those bigger tests or exams, just leverage those opportunities. And then a lot of this information I've taken right from the UNC Learning Center. So I'll share that link with you in the chat here. But these are everything from how to get ready for strategic tests, scheduling, a lot of that. So again, a lot of this information I took right from there. And then just as a reminder too, Nash Community College has a tutoring center and a writing review, a writing lab, and then there's writing review available online. So if, as you're making your schedule for the semester and you're planning out your time, what I would encourage, especially if you know that you have a writing heavy class that's going to have several essays or written components, build in for yourself a deadline before the deadline, if that makes sense. 3 or 4 days before the deadline, So you can go to the Writing Center or submit your document for review, give yourself time to get it back, and make those changes before you turn it in to be graded. There's a tutoring, but there's access to tutoring through Nash for science, math, the writing lab is not just for English classes. So if you're taking a history or a psychology and they're asking you to write research papers and things like that, you're welcome to use the writing center. Okay. So if you're like me and like a lot of students, you've done the work, right? I've gotten myself organized, I've made a plan, I've got my study group, but I lose focus. I sit down to study and then I just so here are some strategies to help you get and stay focused. You may have heard of something called the Pomodoro technique, which is, it's almost like circuit training or the high intensity interval training, if you've heard of those for working out, where you have a dedicated time to sit and focus and work. And then you also have scheduled in breaks. There are timers for these on YouTube, and you can find them of varying length where it's my opinion that focus is kind of like a muscle, and that sometimes you have to build it up to get yourself to be stronger at focusing, right? Especially when everybody has a device in their hand nowadays and the image on the screen changes every second and a half, maybe. So focus is hard for a lot of us, I think. So you can start with something as simple as, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to focus for 2.5, 5 minutes. And then I'm going to take a break for a minute, and then 2.5. And then the next week when you sit down, maybe you try to focus for 5 minutes, and then you take a 2-minute break, and so on and so forth. If you've ever done like a couch to 5K plan where you walk for a minute and then you jog for a minute and then you walk for a minute and jog, kind of the same premise, but you're going to focus for a minute, and then you have to just make sure that you don't let that break time become longer than it's supposed to be. Try to keep yourself disciplined. And that's why those timers, like I said, that are on YouTube are really helpful, because the screen will change. Sometimes they'll have music in the background, things like that, to kind of help signal you, hey, now it's time to get back at it. If you're familiar with high intensity interval training, and you have, or Tabatas, they're called sometimes, there are timers for those that you could probably repurpose in much the same way. So if you already have one of those timers on your phone, you can use that. I always advocate for students, give yourself an incentive, build in a reward for doing something. If that's, okay, well, Bridgerton's out. I don't know what you like to watch on TV, but Bridgerton's out, but I'm not going to watch it until Friday night, and I'm not going to watch it until all my homework's done for the week. Or maybe you say, I'm going to treat myself to whatever your favorite food is, to a piece of pizza, to cookout, to whatever, but only on Fridays once all my homework's done. Or I'll do that, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, things like that. Or you say, maybe you want to build in a day, 1 day a week, which I recommend, but build in at least 1 day a week where you can just have a day off. You're not working, you're not doing homework. If that's Saturday, if that's Sunday, based on your work and school schedule, if it's a Tuesday, you can build that day off, but that's something you'll have to remind yourself while you're studying, or if you're tempted to put off studying. No, I have to study today so that I can have my day off free to do whatever I want. Okay. Another helpful strategy for focus or refocusing your attention is creating what's called a vision board, and that's what this picture is here in the right corner. It's kind of like knowing your why. So when you sit down and you're studying and you're hitting the same point over and over where you feel like, I'm really confused, or why am I doing this? I'm taking all of these classes. The vision board is just a good way to remind yourself, jog your memory. I want, like, this person has a car here. This person has travel pictures. They want to get a nice car. They want to see the world. So whatever that vision is for you, they have on here, I think you can't really see it really well, but I think that's it. Up here, make a difference. So they want to get through school and get their degree so they can make a difference. So just kind of creating something, some visual cue. Maybe you're following in somebody's footsteps, and you can take a piece of their uniform or something and hang that up by your workspace because you want to be a nurse like your family member, or you want to be a firefighter like your family member, or what have you. If you want to be a doctor, go get your stethoscope, and hang that up. That's going to be mine someday to use with my patients. So just creating some sort of visual cue for yourself that when you get frustrated and tired, there's something to kind of jog your memory and refocus your attention to why you're trying to get through the schoolwork. Creating accountability. So if you've ever been an athlete, or if you've ever set your resolution to lose weight, you go to the gym, you meet with a trainer, you have a coach. You look at people who go into the military, there's a boot camp, but they don't just go and learn how, no, there's drill instructors, there's people there to keep them accountable. So ask a classmate, somebody in your study group, somebody you trust, somebody that you know is reliable and responsible. If it's family member, if it's an advisor, a success coach like myself, but ask somebody to check in on you and who's going to follow up. Hey, how's your homework going? Hey, is your essay done? Hey, and bringing somebody in to have a team, because even if we're remote, there's still something about having human connection, and all humans are kind of motivated, at least to some degree, by what other people think of us, and especially if those are people that we respect and trust. So having an accountability partner is another way to kind of keep yourself focused, because if you know, man, Brian's going to come see me on Tuesday and I'm going to have to tell Brian that my homework's not done, that can be a great motivator. And then the last thing I'll say is just that if you find that you've put strategies in place where you've budgeted your time, you've got accountability people, you've set up an organized system, you set up a nice decluttered space, and you're still having trouble, or even if you haven't done those things, but you just feel like you cannot focus, sometimes you might need to ask for help. We do have services through Nash Community College, where you can speak with a counselor. You could speak with our ADA coordinator, who can maybe help look at some resources for you to help you focus. But trouble focusing is a symptom of everything from ADHD to clinical depression to I think even diabetics. Sometimes you just need sugar, sometimes you just need water, things like that. So, but if you find yourself consistently not focusing, and you have these other safeguards there, or you're just not sure if this is trouble focusing because you haven't in a while, or trouble focusing because, hey, I've got this, and this going on in my family life, just be sure to visit, and the link here is to the Student Wellness Center. But again, they can talk to you, ask you questions, see what's going on. Is this something that I should be concerned about? Is this something I need to keep talking to somebody about? Or is this just something I need to work more closely with that accountability partner? Or I need to make sure I talk to my instructor because I'm having trouble focusing because I'm really, really frustrated, right? If you become overly frustrated, that can be an issue that leads to lack of focus, right? If you feel like I'm just studying and I'm not getting anywhere, and you try again and like you've read the same sentence 3 times, right? Then ask for help from your instructor, or ask for help for tutoring. Just don't suffer alone. Don't let that lack of focus or that frustration or anxiety, whatever it is, don't do that on your own, because there's lots of people who want to help you. That's why I'm doing this presentation. We want to help. That's what we're here for. So, okay, you've studied. Now here comes the big day of the test. I apologize if these are insanely hard to read. But if you're a person who knows that they put that timer on me, or they just sit me down in a quiet room and now I have to take a test, there are strategies available to help with test anxiety. Again, that's a place I would refer you to the Student Wellness Center, ADA, it's kind of like if you had an IEP or 504 in school, the ADA at the college can potentially help you get accommodations to help you in school, but you'd have to talk to them. Sometimes they'll ask you to go to a doctor or a psychologist to do some kind of preliminary reviews of things, but they can tell you more about that in student wellness or on the website that I put in the chat. So just some additional strategies. Again, eliminating distraction, filling in bubbles completely, making sure. So one of the things with anxiety and with focusing, the physical cues, the physical things that everybody has told you since you were in kindergarten and on up are immensely helpful in limiting those effects too, or helping combat those effects. So getting 8 hours of sleep, drinking enough water, making sure you spend time moving around at least 20, 30 minutes a day. Even if it's just a leisurely walk around your apartment complex in the parking lot, or to the park, or to go, obviously we're not supposed to be going and visiting a lot of neighbors right now, but just things like that, because those physical things can sometimes trigger our brains to be more anxious, because it's that fight or flight instinct kind of taking over. So just making sure that you do things like that, drinking plenty of water, getting your sleep, trying your best to be on time. A lot of times, I hear you, Brian, I don't either. Trying to get to school on time, things like that can try to help minimize anxiety, because then you're not coming in feeling flustered because you're already late. Having a positive attitude or motto, that's something. So again, we talked about vision boards. That's something you can put on a vision board as something that's positive and encouraging. I can do this, or I got this, or if you have a family member or a friend that always seems to be positive, what's something they say all the time? Don't let this get you down. Think about the things they would say. Reading all the directions. And so again, we talked about that earlier for assignments in class or assignments on your course syllabus, and really interacting with those directions. You can do those do that on tests as well. Don't get stuck on a challenging question, obviously, right? Because that'll start to make you more anxious. Oh, I don't know this. Circle it and come back. Take a brain break if you need it, even on a test. Kind of coming back to that Pomodoro technique, right? Where give yourself time to focus, but then give yourself a little bit of a break so that you can go back in it. Because a lot of times just giving yourself that minute to step back and take a deep breath, readjust yourself, look at time, how much time do I have? You'll refocus yourself, and then you'll see sometimes when you go back through, like, oh wow, how did I miss that the first time? I knew this one. So just taking those breaths and giving yourself a break when you need it. Trying to review your work, double checking, and just always remembering with test anxiety that any test is not a sole measure of your worthiness, of your intelligence, of your mastery of the content of a class, your curiosity, the other things that make you. You're a passionate person, you're a respectful person, all of those things. A test isn't going to say that. And so even if you struggle on the test and you don't get the grade you want, don't let it defeat you, because if you start to create this negative association that the test is who you are, then it's harder to not be anxious on the next one. So just trying to remember that too. And so I've gone through all those, just trying to make sure, unless you were in control one, there's nothing else. One thing I like to do too is, especially on time tests, I don't struggle with test anxiety until somebody tells me that it's timed. And so one thing I like to do is just real quickly, even if it's on scratch paper, work out, okay, I have 60 minutes and I have this many questions, so I have this many minutes per question. And that way, if I'm looking up and I see the timer running, which I hate, then I can say to myself, all right, I can kind of keep a mental track. Okay, well, I'm behind because those two questions took me 14, 15 minutes. So that kind of gives me more incentive to skip the really tricky ones or flag them and come back to them. If you're doing virtual learning and there's a timer and you hate that timer, which again, I hear you. If there's any way to move it or block it and then cover it with a Post-it or something like that, so the timer's not just there. A lot of platforms now will let you hide it, but if they don't build that in, then if you can find a way to hide it yourself, then do that. Okay, and then one more thing I'm going to cover for you here. If you're like me, if you're like a lot of younger people, you're spending a lot of time on social media anyway. So I just encourage you to follow some channels that, while you're scrolling through all of the other things you're interested in, they can also give you helpful advice or motivational, encouraging things. So like on TikTok, Student Life 101 does a little bit of both. Hey, here's how I study. Here's how I prep my space. This account here, Sarah Rapp, I think she's a nurse now. But I think once in a while she'll even post, stop scrolling on TikTok, put your phone down and go study, and things like that, which, guilty, helpful reminder. If you're an Instagram user or Facebook user, whatever platform you're on, I highly recommend following Nash's social channels. Nash Community College does a great job of sharing upcoming giveaways, upcoming lessons, upcoming continuing education classes. Again, if you're concerned, and it's January now, about inclement weather days, following them on social media is another good way to find out quickly, okay, I don't have to go to campus today. Campus won't be open anyway. Homework Help Global, everything from study skills to good habits. This account I personally follow this one, NVCC Wellness. It's Northern Virginia Community College, their wellness center, and they just post super encouraging, positive things. They're not always school related. Sometimes it's just about taking a breath and, hey, you don't remember to, roll your shoulders and stop holding tension in your body, like things like that. So just find, and if those aren't channels that you like, fine. But consider finding ones that have to do with study skills or the things that are unique to you. There are accounts for writing and reviewing essays. There are accounts for, I couldn't find the TikTok channel, but I know I saw one that was about like SAT math. So if you're not always the strongest, they'll work out problems just in a one minute TikTok video. And then you can go on about your day, but there's a way too, if we're talking about small repeated study breaks, building and retaining skill, there's a way to build that into your day, doing something you're already doing anyway. And YouTube, again, so TED Talks can actually be cited as sources in research papers. And then there's, maybe one less research paper you have to read. So I've done that myself, used TED Talks as a source because there's already an expert in the field talking anyway. Thomas Frank does everything from study skills to organizing your office to the really technical things with Google and things like that. And then there's also playlists available on YouTube for studying music. Again, kind of find what interests you or what music you like, but make sure that if you're going to play music, it's not going to distract and take away from your focus. Okay, I don't know what that was supposed to be. Here are some references. And then tomorrow, we're also going to have another call with Jason Ryerson, and I will be facilitating that one. Sorry, guys, I forgot to put it in there. But over goal setting. So we kind of went over that today. But if you think you might benefit from myself or Mr. Ryerson or any of the coaches being in touch with you, helping you find resources to make sure you're getting enough sleep, holding you accountable to your homework, things like that. If we're not the right people, we're at least going to try to help you get in touch with the right people. You can use that email address, successcoaching@nashcc.edu, and we're happy to help you. And then I'm going to drop this link in the chat. This is for your attendance today. If you go to the tiny URL there, the NCC Success, there's a brief survey we'll ask you to fill out, and then you can enter to win, I think it's a gift card. Sorry, I'm not honestly sure. But there's a survey. We'll just ask you again. It's really brief. And we ask you to fill that out and you'll be entered into a drawing. Again, that URL is in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for now. Well, no, I'll just stop the recording. But if you have questions, feel free to place those in the chat.